India's over 60 million small businesses are its lifeline, but many MSMEs are now gasping for breath. From demonetization to the pandemic, the sector has periodically faced severe headwinds. The government on its part has rolled out policies, packages, and schemes. But have they helped? What can the budget do for millions of small businesses in the country? To discuss this and more, we have with us today Rajiv Chawla, Chairman IMSME of India and Jairaj Group of Industries, Animesh Saxena, President, Federation of Indian Micro and Small Medium Enterprises, FESME, and Ram Iyer, Founder and CEO of Vayana Network. Welcome, everyone. So my first question to you, Rajiv, what is the current state of MSMEs in India? You are closely linked with, Faridabad small industries as well. What is the sense that you get?
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Pran, for this wonderful program. The whole world is facing the COVID challenge. Needless to say that the MSME sector is the one that is always and often the most affected. We had a very trying time. Last couple of years have been extremely trying. 2020 was the year of the lockdowns, long lockdowns. And however, we revived many of the MSMEs, and the Indian economy, by and large, revived on a V shape. 2021 was almost a disastrous time in the second wave. We lost many of the entrepreneurs as well. Many entrepreneurs lost their key people also in the organization. So that was a grueling time last year. However, the economy somehow kept its motion. And the MSME sector, in spite of all the challenges that it faced, the exports are up. So overall, the MSMEs tried to fare well and tried to make it the year of the comeback, from setback to comeback. However, now this third wave, which is now there, the Omicron, once again, it calls for the malls to be closed and the weekend curfews and the night curfews. So a lot of trades, traders are losing their, markets, their supply chains, because if I produce and someone doesn't sell, so supply chain also loses the market. So overall, it's a business loss for everyone. And yet this Omicron wave has been slightly milder, slightly less lethal than the previous Delta variant. And we are very hopeful. I'm extremely optimistic about this year, 2022. So we hope that this third wave of Omicron should be over in another couple of weeks. So by mid-February, we expect that Indian economy should once again come back on the track. And the MSME sector, which has been facing all these challenges, a lot of stress, the market disruptions and different challenges, the raw material hikes, any number of challenges that came up in the last couple of years, the logistics, freight costs going up, the manpower costs going up, fuel, energy, I mean, you name it, and virtually every cost has almost doubled in the last couple of years. And yet, we are very optimistic about this year, 2022. And we hope that once we are through this Omicron wave 3, we should once again be on track.
Right. Animesh, Mr. Chawla is pretty optimistic and hopeful that 2022 is better. What is your sense from the interaction that you have with MSMEs? How are they doing?
You see, this year we were hoping most of the MSMEs who could survive this onslaught of the second wave, that they will probably reach to the pre-corona level. Unfortunately, this current disruption has slightly created this uncertainty that how long it will continue. The restrictions, as Rajiv mentioned, that the markets are closed, the curfews are there, and supply chain is badly impacted because of that. So if everything goes well, probably we still have hope that by end of this financial year, by March, we should be able to reach to the pre-corona level. Most of the people have sounded that. The challenges Rajiv mentioned, they are correct. Everyone is suffering through this raw material prices, which has probably, the biggest, maximally hit were the MSMEs. Because, for them, buying at this price and selling at the older rates, this was a big challenge. So all these issues are there, but I'm quite hopeful that we'll reach to that level, the pre-corona level.
Right. Ra, almost 2 years of the pandemic now. What is the sense that you get? How is the sector doing?
As I tell my team also, any SME that has survived from 2016 to 2021 or 22, by nature, you should not even look at credit appraisal. You should give them money because they have managed to prove that they can still hold their, position. I think it's a huge test of temperament and resilience. Prime Minister, when he was talking to WEF, talked about Indians proving temperament and resilience. And I think, what Rajiv and Animesh is saying, I think that is, a huge salute to all of our MSME business guys for really surviving, I would say, a very grueling period. Having said that, I think there are three big factors I think we should just think about and figure out how to resolve. I think while the overall sticker numbers are all going up, exports are up, we should be looking at GDP also recovering back to pre-COVID. I think it's been a very uneven, recovery, in the sense that, if you look at it sectorally, if you look at it geographically, and especially if you look at size of MSMEs, right? Most of our MSMEs are less than 1 crore turnover. And at that level, I think we still are seeing a lot of stress in terms of being able to do that. I think what Animesh and Rajiv talked about, inflation, I think is a very, very big concern, because the purchasing power on the other side is kind of still not showing signs of accepting the inflation fully. So I think depending on the kind of goods you're doing, I think we still require some support there. Especially, I'm hoping this budget kind of helps people's wallets to be a little bit more open. And third, I think, this overall supply chain, which again, Rajiv talked about, I think is going through a lot of interesting stuff. So, while we are aware globally, semiconductor and all that, even internally, there has been a lot of fluctuations in terms of supply chain. So a lot of inefficiencies have started creeping up in terms of inventory management and everything else. You cannot take tomorrow for granted. So therefore, people are, if they have the power, are stocking more, or people are going short out. So just from a supply chain inventory perspective, in many industries, we are also seeing a lot of very uneven inventory buildup, which is not tied to the economy, but just from a caution point of view. The last thing I think is that just from a mental state perspective, and there's something I always talk about, that we have to understand we have all been working from home, or we have been working under very trying circumstances. And I think MSME business guys have had just too many challenges. We need to make sure that they are getting taken care of also in that way. I am lucky to be part of a startup world where we are all a little mollycoddled by investors. The typical MSME needs to have support systems, I think, to help them to kind of, just recover mentally also through this crisis, because this has taken quite a big toll, I think, overall. So I think that's it. I think so. I agree with them that there's a lot of positive signs, but I think we also have to look at details and figure out which sectors, which kind of MSMEs require a lot more support.
So a lot more support. Mr. Chawla, the government has rolled out schemes like ECLGS, PLI. How helpful have they been?
Well, ECLG, yes. After all, it has supported lakhs of entrepreneurs, but only those entrepreneurs, those MSMEs that had access to institutional credit before COVID. It's because this emergency loan was only 20% initially, and then 30% for most of us who already have exposures through institutional credit. What about those who never had access to that credit? So that sector, that area still remains unaddressed or lesser addressed. But emergency loans have helped MSME sector. It is another matter that many of us believe that this additional 10% offered in the second phase is a bit less, and Omicron is now the third wave. And I really appeal to the government, and I hope that they would offer another 10% this time as emergency credit to the existing entrepreneurs who have already survived wave 1 and wave 2 and are now looking at wave 3. Second, you mentioned about PLI. PLI, as I believe, it's only for very large corporates, very large investments. Of course, that would help MSME sector in few years from now, once they set up their projects and we become part of their supply chain. But where is the additional investment incentive for an MSME? In fact, many of the entrepreneurs who've sold off their properties or shares only to help their business overcome these tough times, they end up paying capital gains tax. So I just hope and pray that government one day would relax capital gains, at least on those assets where an entrepreneur is selling off those assets and bringing the money as capital in his own or her own MSME. So, and PLI type of investment scheme or investment allowance is really required for the MSME sector, because small entrepreneurs also arrange funds from family, from friends, sell off their properties, their jewelry, and try to bring in new investments. So as on date, there is no additional investment incentive or production linked incentive to the MSME sector. In fact, one incentive which was available to the MSME sector, two incentives in fact. One was the interest subvention, which the Honorable Prime Minister introduced in November 18. So that 2% additional, interest subvention on the incremental loans, that scheme has already ended. And second is the CLCS, the credit linked capital subsidy, where 15% subsidy was available on the modern technologies when one would invest in. That scheme has also ended because of lack of funds as on 31st of March 2020. So I believe that if the government is very serious and really serious about supporting the MSME sector, then interest subvention scheme must be restarted. Similarly, additional funds to Ministry of MSME should be allocated so that schemes like technology upgradation, the credit linked capital subsidy, and other such schemes can be restarted once again, because this is the time, if you want MSMEs to become part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and you want the MSME sector also to play a major role in Make in India, then these kinds of incentives are required for the MSME sectors, which as on date are missing.
Coming to Animesh, access to finance, Rajiv talked about it. How difficult is it? Are banks lending? What happens to new age lenders? What's happening with finance to SMEs?
You see, if I come to the institutional finance, which Rajiv has mentioned, especially the PSUs, there are two challenges. First, the PSUs, last mile connectivity is extremely poor. They have not reached to the, MSMEs are spread all over the country, the villages, the small towns, everywhere. And PSUs limit is restricted. Plus, they have a very, very stringent lending norms. And especially after this NPA issue for the last couple of years, they have become even more stringent. And what is happening in the banking culture, if something goes wrong, any loan becomes bad, the kind of witch hunting which happens with the people who have sanctioned those loans, it has come as a big deterrent for the people. They go strictly by the book, an Excel sheet based lending, which we have been writing to the government, Reserve Bank, and the Finance Ministry also, that especially during this COVID times, the bank manager should be given some discretionary power. Because that person who is sitting in the branch is the best person to assess the financial viability of that unit. They know the lender, they know the borrower, they know how capable and how genuinely he needs the money. Instead of going by an Excel sheet for NPA norms for a number of days, it's not going to help. Unfortunately, the private lending cost was extremely, extremely high in India. It was ranging around annualized to 24 to 36%. Luckily, with this fintech companies coming into the market, the situation has eased a little bit now. But the fintech is, is being a digital based and tech savvy, model. It is only accessible to the MSMEs who are, educated people, run the educated people. Large number of MSME, you say, they are semi-educated or uneducated people who have started their own little ventures. They are first not aware of all these things, procedure. Plus, they are also scared of this because a lot of stories when they hear about these, so they're scared also. So they require an hand-holding, and government has a role in that. Maybe the the PSUs can probably tie up with these small fintechs. The PSU provides the funds, and these people do the dispersal. So they have the last mile connectivity which PSU lacks, PSU banks lack. So this is on the finance side, which we have been advocating for the government.
Right. Ram, you are someone who is in this segment. Animesh talked about banks tying up with modern day lenders, fintechs. There is a co-lending scheme, and I'm not very aware, where that has moved. But according to you, what can the government do when it comes to, financing MSMEs, and have traditional schemes and policies work?
Yeah, so I think I think the first point I would just make is that the easiest solution in most cases has been to do something on credit side. I think generally all the schemes that we are looking forward to are all on the credit side. I think we just need to look at it a little bit more structurally, because people are saying these pandemics are going to be now a regular feature. We have climate change. We have a bunch of these now. I think we should assume that every year we are going to have disruptions, right, which are not something that we can control. Then structurally, we need to look at a number of things to happen in which can really make this credit getting distributed much more evenly. I think the point that Rajiv and Animesh made, and being very pointed in this. I think the first thing is that number of public infrastructure rails that have been introduced, NBFC, AA, GST, and all of that stuff, really speaking, only cater to the top 10-15% of the MSMEs, because the bulk of our 60 million, when you talk about MSMEs, though I don't know what the exact number is, bulk of them, 99% of them are below 1 crore turnover, and therefore they do not come under any kind of formalization that is possible. So therefore, one really wants to look at structurally, how do you get a lot of these guys formalized, so that then getting credit to them is also becomes an easier job for fintechs plus PSUs or fintechs plus banks. So I think that's one aspect. The second aspect is that we have to think about applying some principles of microfinance kind of principles to a lot of these MSMEs, especially the less than 1 crore turnover, because, we essentially microfinance is a very powerful structure when collective responsibility is given to individual borrowing. We have a lot of clusters in this country. We have a lot of, lobbies in the country. We have a lot of associations in the country. I think there has to be some creative use to be made of those kind of mechanisms to kind of ensure that at scale you can lend, rather than having to go to each single party and figure out how to kind of lend to. I think we have to think about a little innovatively out of the box. Otherwise, the distribution problem will always remain. A lot of the issues that we are talking about today, whether it was ECLGS or, even PLI, if it's extended, will still cater to the larger MSMEs. Among the MSME population. India is unfortunately a case where we have lots of micro MSMEs, and I think we'll have to think about how to kind of get credit to them. Third part is affordability, and I think that's really where the government has a role to play. I know the subvention that Rajiv talked about, but in variety of mechanisms, how do you kind of reduce the cost of credit there? Because ultimately the cost of credit is tied to the cost of possible default, and that's why banks and everybody else mark it up. How do you kind of provide structurally some mechanisms to ensure that the default risk perceived is at least reduced? And I think that is the other area that government can really play a part on. And lastly, I think there's going to be a lot of credit education in this country also. One of the things that we have done, we deal with about 50,000 MSMEs. We do about 3,000 crores of financing a month. What we are realizing is that a lot of MSMEs don't really understand the total cost of getting credit. And that's something I think we should have a lot of education. I think both Rajiv and Animesh belong to associations. We all have to kind of get together, including people like Vayana and other companies, to educate MSMEs what's the best possible forms of credit and what credit to take. Because in addition to the fact that what Animesh talked about, digital friction, where people, a lot of MSMEs will not be able to get access to digital stuff. How do they also understand what they're signing off on? One of the things you will realize when you take a loan agreement today to an MSME, he signs it very quickly. He doesn't even read it. He's used to now just signing it off. Does he understand what all is he signing off on? To me, if you really want to build structurally a place where lenders are comfortable giving credit, the government is comfortable about giving, subsidies, because ultimately subsidies are a cost to the taxpayers. So you have to also make sure that it is something that is actually earning itself over a period of time. And you want to make these MSMEs grow. I think that is the important thing.
Rajiv, if I can come to you, one of the other problems that the sector has constantly faced is delayed payments. Have things eased? And, the government has a portal called MSME Samadhan. Have things improved with that?
All right. Things have really improved. With the onset of the MSME Act 2006, and later on with setting up of MSME facilitation councils across India, with every state constituting a micro small enterprise facilitation council, things really started moving. And in fact, I know that now, of course, it is a state-driven or a council-driven performance. For example, councils of some states are doing amazingly well. Gujarat, Haryana, MSME councils, Maharashtra, I mean, these are exemplary. And in fact, I am myself a member of the Haryana Micro Small Enterprise Facilitation Council, and our council has recovered payments worth more than 700 crores, and for thousands of MSMEs, and exemplary work. Also, now, for example, our state, Haryana, it has gone a step ahead, and now they have brought the awards given by the MSME Facilitation Council. Those awards are now covered under the Land Revenue Act. So which means that the properties can be attached for recovery of that. So of course, it is having an amazing impact, and a lot of solutions are coming forward. However, there are a couple of things. Every state needs to do as good. There are some states where their councils are not performing as great. And so I think those states it's ultimately a man-driven or a state-driven or a system-driven solution. It's an alternate mechanism which is really taking charge. So it is making an impact. Second is the IBC, which of course helps everyone. But because of the COVID pandemic, the limit was raised from the previous 1 lakh rupees to 1 crore. And rightly so, because otherwise millions of cases would have emerged in recent times. So that is also playing a role. However, the MSMEs there, or you can say the operational creditors there, are rated they're given the last priority. So we are appealing to the government. We have appealed to the government. I know FISMA has also appealed to the government that the awards given by NCLT, the liquidation amount that is recovered. So the MSME dues should be given a higher priority, and at least part of their dues or 50% of their dues should be given to them almost at par with the workmen and the other employees of the company. So Samadhan portal has had its impact. Facilitation Council is having its impact. Many states are coming forward with stronger legislations. Now you have a TREADS platform as well, where companies 500 crore and above have to post their dues, and which can be marketed, which can be easily discounted, factored by the other fintech companies and finance companies and NBFCs which are around. So that is also a solution. So many solutions have emerged. Many solutions are taking an institutional mechanism. TREADS is a platform, factoring is a platform, MSME Council is there, IBC is there. So things are moving ahead faster than ever before. However, I agree that the gap in a country with 63 million MSMEs, as they say, naturally the requirement is much more, but I hope the solutions also will keep flowing.
Right. Arimesh, if I can come to you, another aspect where there have been issues is the ease of doing business. While India, has climbed the ranks, what is the situation on the ground? How is it like for small businesses?
Unfortunately, the ground, it has not made much of the difference. Every department, starting from either the factories, health, municipal corporations, unfortunately, these people at the ground has not been sensitized enough that what is ease of doing business. Ease of doing business, it became a buzzword or a fancy word for the governments for approvals and sanctions. They started counting how many days they took to approve a project or to sanction the project. But what about the running existing businesses? There you hardly see any ease of doing business. Every state has this grievance committee other thing. In Haryana, which Raji said, I also belong to Haryana, this is my business. And we see every month it happens. But we have seen that now. It is purely the initiative of the individual who's heading that grievance committee. If that person is proactive, things show a better result. The moment a person changes, a new person comes, and that person takes it as a routine job, the things go back to the old ways. Most of the departments where there is a norm that they have to approve certain applications or projects in a certain number of days, they will reject you the day before the grievance committee sits. And on so many small fancy grounds, and every time is a new objection, which we have been talking to them, fix a cut-off date. Like if someone has filed an application for any license renewal or anything, there has to be a norm that within 7 days all the objections should come at one time, something like that. Unfortunately, the ground level people have not been sensitized, and ease of doing business is missing, which I'll say. We have seen agencies working at cross purposes. Multiple agencies of the same state government are asking for the same information, same data from you. Why can't they have a depository of the data? If one department has all the details from you, very classic example I call like a municipal corporation. They want every business which is being done in their municipal limits, a trade license. If you are working in an authorized industrial estate of the in this state, which is the government estate, and you have a factory license, you have all the approvals and license, why do you need an additional trade license from the municipal corporation? This government need to understand. This is the ease of doing business. So unfortunately, the situation is not conducive right now.
Right. If anyone wants to come in and add something, please feel free.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Animesh said, I would just put I think one of the things that the government promised is to take a review of all the law and legislations and start reducing it. And I think there has been a lot of progress made in dropping. I saw some statistics of the number of redundant laws that have been removed. I think this has to be now structurally enforced, not only at the central level but at the state level. Actually, they should start putting a dashboard of the number of compliances you need to do. Team lead Manish Sabarwal wrote a very interesting article some months back about the number of compliances required for an average MSME, and I think that should be taken as a badge of dishonor, for the people in power, and to say that how do I reduce this and how do I bring it down to a single place.
Rajiv, you want to come?
Yes, yeah. I just want to add to this that yes, somehow. In spite of the fact that India has improved upon its position from 142nd to amongst the 60s in terms of ease of doing business, etc. And many states have taken lead, and now there's a national level survey also that is done, rating different states on the ease of doing business index. Haryana it became number 3 a couple of years back, then dropped down to number 13 for some reasons, and is now once again trying to improve its image. So at least there is some level of competition that different states are showing. Technology is coming to their rescue, and the application system has become easier. However, mind my words, application system has become easier because that is technology based, not the approval system. Approval still is subjective, still is decided by some people behind the desk, and therefore that is one area that keeps struggling. Fortunately, for example, now in Haryana we have a law that if within 15 days for MSMEs, if you don't receive an approval, you take it as a deemed approval. Unfortunately, even GST, which was supposed to bring down the number of compliances, that has in fact added to more and more compliance burden. For example, earlier I could take GST input credit for all that I buy. Then later on, it was reduced to, okay, even if my supplier does not file returns, I can go up to 10% of the input. And then it was reduced to 5%. Starting 1st of January now, it is 0%. So unless my supplier files returns and deposits, I cannot take input credit. So even though I have paid full money to my supplier, and if my supplier does not pay tax or file returns, I lose my input credit. There are almost 6 to 7 new notifications or amendments every day.
Every day.
6 to 7 notifications and amendments every day that impact businesses that come from various departments. And how things change. For example, it was just last year that by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, they revised the limits of the MSME sector. And they called small would be up to 50 crore turnover. Now, within 1 year, raw material prices doubled, steel prices doubled. So even though my production did not go up, the turnover went up. And so I'm out of the ambit of small. So without doing anything, on one hand, in July, on 1st of July 2021, or 2020, on 1st of July 2020, I get a relief that I'm small up to 50 crore. And then suddenly on 1st of July 21, I realized that only on account of steel price rise or some plastic polymer price rise, now I'm beyond 50 crore. Now, when I say beyond 50 crore, there is no harm going vertically. In fact, one of the speakers earlier said that why don't people graduate from micro to small and small to medium and likewise. I have one very serious thing, and which I hear from people. What do we have for medium? Now there is Ministry of MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. Let's ask them, what do they offer to medium? Is there any subsidy? No.
Nothing.
Is there any interest subvention? No. Even the emergency credit initially was only for loans up to 25 crore. Later they enhanced it to 50 crore. So even when they offer some kind of a support mechanism for under emergency scheme or something, that also has a cap. So again, for medium sector, answer is no. And then the last thing is, do you even offer them payment protection? Because in this MSME Act, the payment protection is only for the micro and the small, not for the medium. So which means that someone who was small last year, only on account of price rise, is not taken as small now. So that person is out of the purview of all subsidies, all incentives, and even payment protection.
Even the public procurement.
Even public. Okay. Yes, you're right. So, which means all benefits and all protection mechanisms, and for no fault of his or her, just because there is inflation, overall in the market. So these are some things which really need redressal nowadays by the government also on year-to-year basis. Because if things are changing so fast, then the definition of MSME sector should also change very fast. And it is time that the definition of small should be immediately enhanced from present 50 crore to at least 100 crore. Second is, earlier there was a notification that if any enterprise would graduate from small to medium, they would continue to draw the benefit for next 3 years. Idea was to help them in this transition period so that, they solidify as a medium or a large enterprise, and then they don't need any support. But nowadays, even that notification is no more applicable. So the minute on a turnover on 31st of March, you clock that turnover more than 50 crore, suddenly now you are out of the ambit of the entire support mechanism and the protection mechanism that you have for the micro and small sector.
Right. So completely out of time, Animesh, if I can come to you, if you had a wish list for the government for budget this year, what would that be?
You see, first I'll start with, I think Rajiv has mentioned, is the interest subvention. Government has to restore it. Large number of exports, 40% of India's export. This is a conservative figure. Even some of the minister, Mr. Gadkari, has admitted it is probably 50% plus. MSME contributes to the export of India. Export interest subvention was a big relief because since the cost of finance in the currently open market is 9 to 10%, people who have access to institutional finance, and interest subvention was 4%. So it was really helping us to get a finance at almost an international prices. So one is the restoration of this thing. Second, the capital gain, especially on the business assets when you sell this on this thing. And the third thing is especially for MSMEs, we were hoping that the government will come something in the budget for controlling the raw material prices. As Rajiv said, there has to be some cost audit. How come suddenly, all the raw material prices have shot up in India, and internationally they have not gone to that extent? So what went inside where the cost of it? So these there has to be like Competition Commission of India. They should look into this, and there has to be cost audit. That why the cost of raw material has gone so high. So government need to some intervention. Unfortunately, sad part of the government has, so far, we have been pleading with the government, but government has done very little to control the raw material prices. They said it's a market force. You have to sit with them, all stakeholders together and take a call. It is not going to help. So these are the few wish lists which I have with the government for this budget.
Ram, quickly, your wish list?
So I think consumption. I think that's one area that the government should ensure that there is India is going to grow only by a consumption story. We have to kind of get more wealth into the hands of everybody to buy stuff. I think second is GST. I think that's one area on a transactional basis every day we are all involved with. That laws have to get simplified. Some of these new amendments they brought in terms of how much ITC you can take. I mean, we really have to kind of make GST something that people are willingly getting into and managing it rather than now becoming more and more a compliance issue. I think that's the second part. And third part is that just structurally, I think I would like, it may not be a budget issue, to push this formalization of the economy by making it simpler, not by mandating it and giving a stick, but by simplifying it so much and giving a lot of credit points to people who formalize. Because only then you can get access to credit in a much faster way. And then make it at least cheaper credit in a faster way. So I think those are three things that I would really like to kind of see happening, if not in the budget, but through this year.
Right, Rajiv?
All right, very quickly, interest subvention scheme, yes, more budget for the MSME ministry so that they can relaunch and redo the credit linked capital subsidy and technology upgradation schemes, PLI type schemes for the MSME sector. Also, 2 years back, the government announced a mother of funds, a 50,000 crore rupees package that will come as equity to the MSME sector. It's been 2 years now. Third wave of COVID has now, is due to end. We are desperately looking for implementation of that major announcement under Atmanirbhar Bharat 1.
Great. I think a lot of issues there for the finance minister to look at. And I'm hopeful some of this gets addressed. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you all.